Okay, so we are starting a new mimer from this week's Bar Malchus. Actually, a Mugadik mimer from Yom Gimel Parshas Dvarim. It was a Tuesday, the same kviyas like today. Hey Menachem Av, the Arizal's Yartzeit, Tafshin Chav Hey. This was also, when the Rebbe originally said it, it was the day that the Rebbe finished saying Kaddish for his mother. His mother passed away. Vav Tishrei Tafshin Chafei. Tafshin Chafei was the same kviyas like our year, where it was a Shana Muberes. So 11 months was Hey Menachem Av, the 5th of Menachem Av. So even though it was an ordinary Tuesday, the Rebbe didn't say Mamorim on a regular Tuesday. This was said because of and connection with his mother's is the end of saying mother for his Kaddish for his mother, and also the Rebbe in Tafshin Mem Ches at the end of the Shloishim, or the Rebbetzin gave out this mimer, edited Muga, etc. Bilam Avos Lanatzach, that death will be taken away, removed forever. Hashem will erase tears and from upon every face. And the Rebbe Marash explains in his mimer with the same title, the fact that when Mashiach comes, death will cease. What is the reason behind it? Because then the spirit of impurity will be removed from the land, and because the spirit of impurity, the Ruach HaTumah, will be removed, that is why death will stop. So the Rebbe is going to explain the connection. Why does one automatically lead to the other? So it says in line 6, be understood by prefacing the reason. That's explained in the pasuk that we'll soon bring. Will soon prove, and will soon bring the pasuk that the Chet Eitz Hadas caused and brought about death in the world. Death and the Chet Eitz Hadas are connected with each other. And the approach of this mimer is going to be that they have an innate association with each other. They have an essential connection with each other. It's not Adam Rishon did A wrong, so Hashem punished him with B. When when a person their person can be punished, person does this, they get a different punishment. They're not connected. The whole approach over here in this mimer is going to be that there's a direct connection between the Chet Eitz Hadas and the idea of death, or at least in the beginning, he's going to explain at least the need for death. The necessity for death came about because of the Chet Eitz Hadas. And then later he's going to explain how really the Chet Eitz Hadas is really bound up with the idea of death itself. Further in line 9, the idea behind this is through the sin of the Hadas became an intermingling of the good and bad. The Metzias Hara. The existence of bad was also there prior to the sin. This is related a little bit also to what we learned in the previous mimer. But the way bad existed prior to the Chet Eitz Hadas, also us at that time before the Chet Eitz Hadas, the bad and good were two separate and distinct entities. As it's known, that initially, at the beginning of creation, before the Chet Eitz Hadas, the location of Klippus were below the worlds of Kedusha. There was no intermingling. There was clear and defined and separated borders. By the Chet Eitz Hadas, through the sin of the Eitz Hadas, became an intermingling and a mixture of good and bad in the entire world. The Eitz Hadas itself had the idea of good and bad in it, like it says, Eitz Hadas Toivara, And through Adam Rishon partaking of the Eitz Hadas, he spread that mixture throughout the entire world. And the Rebbe brings in a footnote that literally in every type of being, in Doimim, Tzemeach, Chaim, Medaber, whether it's inanimate, growing things, living things, or people, Adam Rishon, through eating from the Eitz Hadas, caused a mixture of good and bad, which prior to the Chet Eitz Hadas, they were not intermingled, they were not mixed together. By that the bad is mixed up with the good, and the good is mixed up with the bad. But add to such a degree, it's not just a lot of the time, some of the time, most of the time, but asher ein toiv v'loy ra ve'ein ra v'loy toiv. To such a degree are they all mixed up with each other that there is no good that is free of bad when we're talking about in this world, and there's no bad without good. In this world, there's always a mixture of the two. So now we can understand a little bit more, and we're going to head towards now understanding the idea of the need for death because of this. This is what it says, that after Adam Harish sinned with the Eitz Hadas, so Hashem said, we need to send them out of Gan Eden. Why do we need to send them out of Gan Eden? Because Hashem was worried about something. And now that he ate from the Eitz Hadas, perhaps Adam Harish will stretch out his hand, perhaps he will also partake from the tree of life, and then he's going to eat from the tree of life, and he will live forever. So the Rebbe is going to ask a very basic question. If the Eitz Hadas brought death into the world, so fine, or let him eat from the Eitz HaChaim and undo that problem. A person injures themselves, they take medicine, they heal themselves. Over here, he ate from the Eitz Hadas, he got infected with death. So let him eat from the Eitz HaChaim. What's the problem? And now he will undo that problem. Seemingly, the initial way, the way the person was created was that he should live forever. And the reason for this, that he was commanded not to eat from the Eitz Hadas, is so he shouldn't die. Like it says in the pasuk, from the Eitz Hadas, do not eat from it. What's going to happen if you eat from it? Be careful, because in the day that you eat from it, surely you will die. Top of page 1. So therefore, if he was forewarned not to eat from the Eitz Hadas to prevent his death, so therefore, let's go ahead. Let's allow him to eat from the Eitz HaChaim and undo that. What does it bother the Eibishter? That he should eat from the tree of life, and he'll live forever. So to answer this question, the Alter Rebbe explains. The Alter Rebbe explains in Torah, through the Chet Eitz Hadas, bad became now intermingled into the person. Therefore, be atana. After the Chet Eitz Hadas, yes, one could be concerned, and one should be concerned. Perhaps he will stretch out his hand, and he will live forever. Because if Adam Rishon will live forever, also the bad that's intermingled in him is will have an everlasting existence. So therefore, what's the problem over here? Beforehand, he had the Chet Eitz Hadas. Before the Chet Eitz Hadas, there was no bad within him, so it was fine that he lived forever. Now Hashem sent him out of Gan Eden because he didn't want him to eat from Eitz HaChaim. He didn't want him to live forever, because once he already took in from himself the Eitz Hadas, so he gave into himself some of that Ra, and now that Ra would live forever as well. That's why Hashem wanted him not to eat from Eitz HaChaim. So now we can understand, according to this, we could say, the reason why death came about in the world, so that the bad should not exist, like we mentioned before. So it wasn't just a personal thing in Adam Rishon, but it was the entire world now became a totally new setup than it was at the beginning of creation. Why was there necessary to be death in the world? Because It wasn't just like he did this wrong, now he got punished, but there was a problem in place. The Ra was mixed into everything. The bad was mixed into everything. If there wouldn't be death, so then bad would continue existing. By the way, an interesting point, just to bring in from a totally different place. The Rebbe speaks about how every generation we're coming closer to the Geula. Why? Because you have the cumulative effects of our Torah mitzvahs from all the generations. Torah mitzvahs is everlasting. Torah mitzvahs go on. And since Torah mitzvahs go on, so we don't just have the Torah mitzvahs that we're doing, we have Torah mitzvahs from the generation prior, Torah mitzvahs all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, and even earlier discussed with the others, etc., etc. And therefore, there's a famous mashal where the midget on top of the shoulders of giants, etc., etc. Because all the Torah mitzvahs is cumulative. So the question arises, but one could seemingly ask the opposite. What about the Avedas? What about all the generations of negative things that were done? So the Rebbe says those are not cumulative. When a person dies, those things are finished with, either because the death is a kapara or something else, but it's not a cumulative thing. We don't say that the previous generations of bad keep on piling up, and now we have a lot of bad. It doesn't work that way. This is at least similar to what he's saying over here, that through death, it ensures that the Ra does not have a kiyum, does not keep on existing. And that's why it's necessary for once Adam Rishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, it's necessary for death to take place. So now, okay, let's stop. Let's stop over here. Any questions before we go
on? A couple of mimers ago, you said this world is almost 99% bad. This kind of implies it's 50-50 or something.
There is this idea that this world is 99% or 90% or vast majority, and this happens by way of gradations of Seder Ishtalshlus. Olam Habriya, the majority is good. Olam HaYetzirah is half good, half bad. Olam HaSiyah is the majority bad, and Olam HaSiyah Agashmi, our physical world, is majority almost in its totality bad. And that mixture came about through the Chet Hadas. Beforehand, it was completely distinct and separate. Not just us, I believe also in the other worlds, he infected as well.
So is this mimer so far talking about Asiya only, the physical world?
Yeah, essentially he's talking about this world. Like we had over in, like I mentioned before from the footnote that he said the entire world became mixed in. In a simple sense, it's talking about this world.
Okay.
So now, in the next paragraph of Ois Aleph, on line 10, page 12, the Rebbe is going to introduce a deeper connection between the Chet Eitz Hadas and death. Beforehand, the way we explained is, we must, like Hashem's hand is like forced, he must institute death so that the Ra should not have a kiyum. Now we're going to explain how really the Chet Eitz Hadas itself and death are really themselves connected, not just it's a preventative measure so that the Ra shouldn't keep on existing. And that occurred, the mixture of bad occurred through Chet Eitz Hadas, so therefore we need to institute the idea of death. But even more so, there's a deep connection between the two. Line 10, Shloimer, we could say, the death in the world that comes about through the sin of the Eitz Hadas, is a result of the sin itself, not just a preventative measure like in the previous ois, but it's interconnected with and it's an outcome of the sin itself. The idea behind this is, why is the idea of death an outcome of the sin itself? It says, the inyan hachayis hu b'kedusha davka. This is also runs in connection with what we learned in the previous mimer. The true idea of life and being alive is specifically in Kedusha, like we said. Oides, Kalim, Neshamas, they are Chayim Bakiyim Atzmi. They are truly alive. Masha'enken Harava Tuma, as opposed to bad and Tuma, Heipach HaKedusha Himavas, the opposite of holiness, their death. This is the reason why the Chazal say, Rishoyim Afbachayim Kruim Mason. Rishoyim, even while they are alive, they're called dead. And Atvav Bekim Bashem Alakechem, because you are cleaving to Hashem your God, that's why Chayim Kulchem Hayoim, that's why you are all alive today. So Kedusha is synonymous with life. It's the source of all life. Klippa, which is at a disconnect of Kedusha, the godly life force in Klippa, like we mentioned in the previous mimer, is in the state of Golus inside of it. It doesn't identify with the Klippa, and vice versa. The Klippa doesn't identify with the godly life force that's in it. So then the Klippa itself is not alive. It may appear so, but it's not really alive. Since it, through the Chet Etzadas, was intermingled into the person, that which is spiritual death, is then Ishtal Shaboy Gamis Kipshuta. So from this came already by a chain descent. Within the person, literal and physical death. From the spiritual death that he imbibed through eating the Eitzadas, he brought into him, which before wasn't, bad. And since Ra and Misa and death go together, so therefore, since Ra and death go together, so from that spiritual death that he took into himself, that resulted in a physical death as well. And it wasn't only himself, like we said. Adam Rishon caused an intermingling of bad in the entire creation. Beforehand, the creation was separated into two spheres of good and bad, but by Adam Rishon eating from the Eitz Hadas, he didn't just bring bad into him, he brought bad into the entire creation. So he brought death into the entire creation, because bad, Ra, is by its very self death spiritually, and from that comes out physical death as well. And now we can understand what we started off at the beginning of the mimer. At the beginning of the mimer, we said, that's the reason why when Mashiach comes, death will be cut off forever. Since then, bad will become nullified, which is Mavas Haruchni, spiritual death. Therefore, it'll be automatically also the literal idea of death will cease. So again, it's not going to be like a reward. Okay, Mashiach's times is coming. Everything has to be good. One of the rewards that Hashem will give us will be everlasting life. Death will cease to be. No, the very cause for death, the very reason for it is because of the Ra that's in the world. Since the spirit of bad, the spirit of Tumah, Klippa will be removed from the land, there won't be any more Klippa within us, there won't be any Ra in us, so therefore there won't be any death in us. That's why there won't be any death when Mashiach comes. What is the reason that Dafka, when Mashiach comes, that's when bad will cease? And as a result of that, because bad will cease when Mashiach comes, therefore the result will be that death will stop. So why is bad specifically stopping when Mashiach comes? Mavas Haruchni, which is spiritual death, and therefore, by extension, physical death will cease as well. So, the reason for that is, because then, when Mashiach comes, it will be a very lofty revelation of light. In comparison to this light, this battle in Memela Kolamanagdim, so all opponents are automatically cease. And now he's going to give situations where there was great spiritual revelations, godly light revealed, and even though to a certain degree the opponents were not in ascendancy, but still in all they were removed. Still in all, it's not the way it can be in Mashiach's time. Line 24, the Maimer explains that though also in the time that the Beis Hamikdash exists, especially the time of the first Beis Hamikdash, the kindness here, how much more so in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, that the Zohar calls it the time of the moon at its fullest. The moon is signified as the idea of Spheres HaMalchus. Spheres HaMalchus is the level which causes the tzimtzum and the constriction between the revelation of godliness into the worlds. The moon being full indicates an idea that godliness is fully revealed here in this world. And that has to do, connected also with the idea that it's the 15th, Shlomo HaMelech was the 15th generation, and the moon is full on the 15th of the month. But anyway, in the times of Shlomo HaMelech was a very great revelation of light. Because of this revelation, Kol HaGoyim is battle, the fun of all the Goyim were in this battle before Shlomo HaMelech, not through war whatsoever. They didn't need to battle any bad. They didn't need to engage with the Goyim. They were subservient in and of themselves. That's why he was called Shlomo HaMelech. It says in the pasuk, in the top of page Zayin, it says in the pasuk that his name will be Shlomo because peace and tranquility are placed on the Eden in his days. So he's called Shlomo, which the name indicates the entire being of Shlomo HaMelech that would be peaceful. Not like David HaMelech, that David HaMelech had to fight many battles, but Shlomo was the idea of peace from all the opponents. So there was a certain type of sublimation and subjugation of the Klippa in his days. But the Rebbe says, even in Shlomo HaMelech's days, when taken in comparison with Mashiach's times, it wasn't a total and complete sublimation of Klippa. The revelation that was in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, it was in such a way that there was still room for the external ones, for the Klippas to nurse from. The way how the external ones, how the Klippas were able to nurse Chayis and exist then in the times of Shlomo HaMelech was only from the back of Kedusha. They could not grasp, they could not grab hold of, they could not take hold of anything in the Pnimius in an internalized fashion. Yeah, Shlomo, we could say, the fact that in the days of Shlomo HaMelech, there was still room for the external ones, for the Klippas, to nurse Chayis from Kedusha. It was also manifest and recognizable in the way how the Goyim were bottled before. True, they were bottled. True, they'd not fight. There was peace, etc., etc. But still, there was some entity of importance to the Goyim. So he says, like, for example, the queen of Shiva, though even while she was in her own country, and she only heard about Shlomo HaMelech, this affected in her a bit of bittul. Because of that, she came to visit Shlomo HaMelech. The Rebbe says in the footnote that this is because of how powerful Shlomo HaMelech was, and the revelation of Shlomo HaMelech was so great that even far away, it caused people to be bottled. Usually a king of one country does not just head over to investigate and see what's doing with the king of another country. The fact that she felt so taken by what she heard about Shlomo HaMelech that she herself picked up to go ahead and travel and want to see Shlomo HaMelech in person, that itself indicated that Shlomo HaMelech affected in her some type of bit. And that was at the initial stage. What about afterwards? And this even more so, specifically after she came to visit him and she saw the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech So then, how much more so was there bittul from Malka Shva to Shloimeh? Shai days and his battle upon him through that, she became nullified before him, in such a way that the pasuk describes that she was like out of breath. She couldn't even. She was out of spirit. She couldn't really she couldn't come back to herself. That's how overwhelmed she was by Shloimeh. So that's even a higher state of bittul. Yet, with all of that bittul that was experienced by the nations and that was caused and was revealed through the revelation that took place in the times of Shloimeh Melech, still in all, Gam Oz Haisa Malcha, still in all, even then, she remained a queen. And not only was she a queen in her eyes, but V'Yisedim is even more so. Shagam Shloimeh Kibbutz the covered God also Shloimeh Melech gave her a lot of honor, which means that even from the perspective of Kedusha, honor was shared and given to was given to Malka Shva, to Klippa. So as great and as high and as powerful as the revelation was in Shloimeh Melech's time, that it was Kaim Mesir Bashlemus in the words of the Zohar, it was a very great Gilui Lakus, and because of that, there was no opponents to Kedusha. With that, and alongside with that, Klippa still existed. But Klippa wasn't in a subservient state. Even Malka Shva came to receive from Shloimeh Melech, but he still honored him. So there was still some Metzius of Klippas. Enkin Agili Lilos and Love, as opposed to the revelation of Mashiach's times, it'll be in such a manner that the external ones, the Klippa, will not be able to nurse anything whatsoever. Not like what we spoke about in the times of Shloimeh Melech, that they were nursing, but from the Acharayim, from the back. They will not be able to nurse at all. Not even from the level of the back. And bad will be completely nullified. Death will be swallowed up, will be cut off completely, forever, because bad and klippas will stop forever, completely, not even in the way of Yinika Macharayim, not even in the way of receiving from the back. Any questions? Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to go on to explain a little bit more to get a deeper understanding of different ways how bad can be nullified. And the example that he's going to give is within the person himself. Within the person's own avodah, there is a way how I can disconnect from the bad, ignore the bad, and push away the bad. That's called sur merah. And then there's a level that's called moyes berah, despising the bad, or soine hara, or hating the bad. In scenario one, the bad still has some type of existence, except he doesn't engage with it. And he puts it and he shuns it and he puts it totally aside. In the other option, despising the bad, hating the bad has no room whatsoever. And that same thing, like a person has in their avodah, those two approaches in the person's own avodah is reflective of the two periods, the time of Shloimeh Melech versus the time of Mashiach, which will be a time of similar to this idea that bad will not have any type of existence whatsoever. We'll stop over here.